everybody. Back again with another amazing episode. And today it's all about creativity, right? I'm going to be joined by an amazing author who's written a children's book. And she's going to share her story and her journey and how she's using her creative skills to really inspire the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs and whatnot. Yeve, how are you doing today?
Hey, Kuda. I'm so good. So happy to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me on. I can't wait to jump into it and chat.
Great. So, an interesting fact is that we're both from Zimbabwe, and it's not every day that I get to interview someone from Zimbabwe. So I'm really, really excited because you're also in my neck of the woods. You're in the New York City area, right?
I'm in the DC area, close.
DC area, okay. But anyway, we're in the States and we're both on the East Coast. And, it's always amazing to bump into people from the motherland who are, breaking new barriers and, forging forward and being pioneers. And for you, before we get into kind of like the creative stuff you're doing, can you share a little bit about your journey, coming from Zimbabwe and coming to America and how that experience has been for you?
Absolutely. And thank you for your kind words. Likewise, I mean, when I connected with you, I felt the same way. Wow, look at this Zimbabwean doing amazing things. I need to connect with this guy and just have an intro conversation. So definitely feel the same way. So my journey from Zimbabwe to the US started over half. I've been in the US for over half of my life now. So it started when I was pretty young. And I came here like most folks, for school, and went to college in the South and then started working, did a short stint abroad in the UK, came back for law school. And I've, otherwise set roots here. My husband also happens to be from Zimbabwe and we have a daughter. So we're raising our family here for sure. And it's been, I think, a very interesting journey filled with lots of, highs, graduating law school, for example, in the US, and getting to be part of what I always envisioned and always like saw on TV and all of that has been amazing, right? And also some lows, as an immigrant in the US, you face a lot of challenges. And then also, obviously, as a Black person in America, so many things that happen that impact you. Whether it's, the killings of Ahmaud Arbery, et cetera, all of that stuff. And so it's been a really interesting journey. And I think through it all, the other thing is that I have literally grown up in this country. And so I have a very special place in my heart for America. It is home. And likewise, Zimbabwe is home, right? And so I'm always learning and kind of trying to balance that duality that exists within me, right? And it's interesting now, raising a first-gen American kid, how that, will play out and all of that. So I'm at a very interesting part of my life and my journey as an immigrant in the US, because now I'm raising, an American who is also, African as well, right? And it's like, how do I do that not having had that same experience? So it's just interesting. And I'm so thankful and grateful to have had all the experiences I've had to get to this point.
Yeah, you're raising a true African American, right?
Right, exactly.
The roots are from Africa, but they were born here in America. Yeah. Well, that's amazing, and thank you so much for sharing your wonderful journey so far. So you went to law school, right? So I'm assuming you're a lawyer?
I am, yes.
So how do you balance being, an attorney or a lawyer during the day and also working on some of your creative projects that we're going to dive into in a minute?
Yeah, so people ask that question a lot. And what I tell people is I'm a creative at heart. This is who I am. I have always throughout my life sought creative outlets from probably my daughter's age. I was acting, dancing, singing, all of that stuff. I've done that right up until law school, actually. In law school, I was in a, theater production show. And so I'm a creative at heart. The lawyer piece is what I do, and it's part of how my brain works, but I'm probably one of those maybe odd people who are very analytical on one hand, but also very creative. Like I literally have a journal to write down all the creative ideas that I have like on a daily basis, because
wow.
So much in my
I want to steal that journal.
And so for me, it's really just being more of who I am.
Mhm.
The impetus for my creative media company really is my daughter and having my child. Like a lot of parents, you get inspired when you become a parent because you realize either there's a gap or whatever. And so that's the same thing that happened to me. And as far as like, my day job being a lawyer or whatever, I like to think that at this stage in my career and my life, I am bringing my full self to work. And so, at work, while I'm a lawyer, I also bring this creative side because I have these ideas that other people might not be thinking about, right? And they're not purely like just technically legal. It's like other creative ideas about, how can we make this place more inclusive, more diverse, and all of that. And those are all things that I do already with my creative media company. So I like to say that there is a harmony between my day job and like my, side hustle, I should say.
Great. So let's talk about your side hustle.
Yeah.
Pelisa Creative. Where does the word Pelisa come from?
Yeah, and you said it perfectly. So kudos to you. Pelisa is a Ndebele word, and it means to bring to life, to create something, right? And having explained a little bit about what the company does, it kind of is fitting, right? And I chose Ndebele specifically because I am at a place in my life, being married to a man who is half Ndebele, half Shona, raising our daughter to speak Shona and Ndebele, which are the two primary languages in Zimbabwe. I really am digging into and tapping into more about Ndebele, about the culture and all of that. And so I wanted to use a Ndebele word as an homage to Ndebele and kind of like, my new family, right? And to bring to life, because that's really what I am doing and what I strive to do, bringing ideas to life. Like I said, my little journal, and bringing forth a new way of like thinking about Africa, of thinking about, people who are doing amazing things on the continent and all of that stuff. That's kind of what I hope to achieve with the company.
So I want to share my screen a little bit and show one of the projects that's come out of Pelisa. And have you just kind of like give a narration as to the inspiration and what's going on with the project. So, welcome and happy shopping. And there seems to be a book, a calendar, so many different things going on. So let's start with the book.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my debut book as a children's author. It is called My First Book of Shona and Ndebele Words, and as the name implies, it is a language learning book. And I chose a language learning book, and I've shared a little bit about this before, but I chose it because, hey, I'm raising an African American child. We knew we wanted her to know her African roots. We figured the American part would take care of itself, but we wanted to be intentional about creating a space for her to learn her African culture, languages, etc. And as we were building her library when I was pregnant with her, we searched and couldn't find quality resources that would do this. And so after the search and all of that, my husband is like, well, why don't you just do it? And I was like, you know what? You're right. Especially because I'd always wanted to be an author of some sort. I just hadn't put much effort into it. But the birth of my daughter really propelled me to do so. And so I created this book to initially to just teach my daughter about Shona and Ndebele, like I said, the two primary languages, the languages we speak in our home. But as I was doing my research, I really discovered that there were a couple of things when it comes to children's book, especially children's book that are centered on Africa. And I'll share a couple of them with you here. The first is, that's my daughter.
Nice. Thumbs up. She's giving a thumbs up. She's loving what she's reading.
Exactly. So the first is when it comes to children's book, most children's books do not feature a character of color. They actually feature animals more than they feature characters of color. And parents would probably know this as you kind of search for books. You see that. And that is starting to change, but only very recently. The second is there aren't that many people of color who are writing books, children's books. That is again starting to change, but that's kind of been the history, and especially not women of color, especially not Black women. And then when we talk about the protagonists in children's books, like I said, often animals, but typically not people of color, certainly not typically Black people. Again, that's changing. And so when I was learning all of this, I was like, wait a minute, this is not right. This doesn't make any sense. Our children deserve to be represented in this media, right, in literature. And then when I turned to Africa specifically, I realized and researched that most African-centered books are not written by Africans. They're written by typically white folks who are reporting on and writing about what they're seeing or whatever. And the narrative very often is pretty much the same. One, there's a lot of animals that are featured. And then two, the narrative is that, you know, poor little Susie walks 20 miles just to get to school and she has no shoes, et cetera, right?
So you read that same book? I read about poor little Susie.
Exactly. There you go. Everybody knows poor little Susie, right? And we also see her on TV when it's like just 50 cents will get Susie all the food she needs for the year. You know what I mean? Like we see that. And so I was very much compelled to change that narrative, being an African myself, having lived on the continent and having, you know, a wealth of resources and people that I know who are the complete opposite of that narrative, right? And that's not to say that narrative of poverty doesn't exist, but so does it exist here in the US. And I think, you know, it's time that the narrative changed. And so I really was emboldened to be like, well, I'm going to write our stories, right? And so I wrote this book set in Zimbabwe. And again, speaking of Zimbabwe specifically, there's a negative narrative that comes out of Zimbabwe. Often, if you're looking at the news, it's very one-sided. And so I wanted to kind of take that upon myself and say, well, I'm going to tell you that, you know, it's not what you think. And then boiling it down furthermore, the languages of Shona and Ndebele, the people of Shona, the Shona and Ndebele tribes historically are not, they don't get along, let me say, for lack of a better word. There's a lot of contention, a lot of history between the two. And so what did I do?
How did you and your husband get together?
I know. You know, my life is a story of rebellion at the end of the day, right? And this,
but I think your life is also a story that shows that love conquers all. So 100%. Yes, there is that tribalism. Yeah. But at the end of the day, love conquers all.
Exactly, Kuda, you said it. And so my book is really an act of rebellion to say, well, why do we need to only showcase one? These are both the primary languages. Let's put them together and let's learn them both, right? And so that is really the backstory to kind of why I set up the book in the way that it is. And also, I should add that I am not aiming for, and I know now, having talked to a lot of parents in the diaspora, I'm not aiming for fluency with my children. You know, I really just want them to understand and have the basics. And so this is like a basic intro book. And then if you step aside a little bit and think more broadly, this is a book that I wrote because I wanted kids unlike my daughter. So let's say white kids in her class, Asian kids in her class, to know a little bit about where she's from too, right? I don't want her to have the same experience that I did and maybe you did in college, where people are like, Zimbabwe, where is that? Is that in Nigeria? You know what I mean? I want kids to be able to be like, oh my gosh, Zimbabwe, I read the book. And you know what I mean? And so it was also that, right? The concept of windows and mirrors for our children to be able to see themselves in the book and where they're from and their culture, and windows for kids who are not like mine to be able to be like, oh my gosh, this is so similar to, you know, whatever I've experienced, what I've seen, and oh, this is different. You know what I mean? And to realize that there are a lot more similarities than there are differences. And to your point, love conquers all at the end of the day. Like, we're all human, we're all people. So that is all of the things that I was trying to accomplish with this book. Very, very high ambitions, but that's the type of person that I am, you know?
Great. And if anyone wants to grab the book, I put the link to Yeves' website. So you can just go to pelisacreatives.com and you can go there and you'll see she also has a calendar. Are you going to drop a calendar for 2022?
I'm not going to drop a calendar for 2022. And here's why. If you go to my website, you will see that there is a limited edition, a limited stock of the book. Because what happened is I started this, you know, thinking, oh, I'm just going to write this for my daughter and maybe 5 other people. The book has taken on a life of itself. And I'm actually sold out almost
Oh,
of my
wow.
first reprint of the book, first print of the book. And so you can buy my book on my website, but it's also available on Amazon, where you can get it as well. And I'm actually working on a second reprint for next year. So I put the calendar aside, and I'm
Mhm.
just focusing on the book, and I'm going to do a reprint next year.
Awesome. Well, I think whenever, the calendar comes back again, I think people will love it and they'll buy it. But I think the book is the most essential, right? Because the
Yeah.
kids get to learn, they get to, grow and progress. In my opinion, I think there are two things that you could really give a child that will change their lives. And I think the first one is traveling, giving them the opportunity to experience other cultures and just opening up their eyes to the world at a broader perspective. I think it just changes their lives, right? And then the second thing is the ability to communicate languages. So having that access to learn new languages, so that as they travel, they can communicate and just in a more intimate and deep way. It changes the experience. One of the things that happened to me by accident was I started a business in Saudi Arabia, and I always found this hard for me to connect with our customers and the people over there because I didn't speak Arabic. When I learned Arabic, it changed the game because they would receive me in a more different way. They would actually like respect me a little bit more because they'll be like, "Hey, you took more time learning this language. You appreciate us. Like you are, there's just this
Mhm.
camaraderie level that you're able to experience when you can just connect with someone else in kind of like a similar language. So I really appreciate what you're doing in helping this crop of first generation Americans and also anybody who just wants to learn and connect. And I think that's super great. So what's next? In that journal of ideas, that idea journal. What's next on your plate?
Oh, like I said, the reprint is going to take my time, because what I was working on this year is really kind of establishing the brand and getting people to know who we are. And um, for the book for next year, I'm really going to have to double down on that and kind of get more distribution channels and more distribution partners. The funniest thing that happened, and the best thing actually that happened to me this year, was I got an order from Tokyo, Japan for the
Oh,
book.
wow.
I don't know anybody in Tokyo. I have not marketed.
Konnichiwa.
I know, konnichiwa, right? I have not marketed to anybody, but I definitely was like, wait a minute. Okay, so I clearly need to put out more, get in depth, right, and get deeper. And so that's kind of what I'm working on. And then as it relates to what's next, like I said, I really just want to amplify African voices and tell our stories. So expect more books.
Mhm.
Um, I would love to see the equivalent of Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon filled with like African, animations. I would love to see that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I would love to play my part in like getting us there. I would love to assist, and I'm starting to work on this. I'd love to assist fellow African authors, especially those who are on the continent who are trying to, write books and all of that. So all of those things are things that you can see in the future. But for sure, next, is just continuing to double down on this book. And I hope this time next year, Palisa will be more well known than it is, and the book will be in more homes than it is. That's my goal.
Well, all the best on your goal. And if there's anything that I can do to help accelerate, your achievement of that goal, just let me know. And in closing, what words of inspiration would you like to give to the listeners who are
Yeah.
listening in, who have maybe an aspiration to start a side hustle, a passion project that they've always wanted that's not really in alignment
Yeah.
with what they do from a 9 to 5 perspective? What words of inspiration can you share?
Oh, I love this question. And I talk about this often because I get this question often. And the biggest piece of advice that I would share is super basic, but it is just start. Just start. Do not wait for the perfect alignment of timing and whatever. Just start. And, there is nothing wrong with taking imperfect action. I have certainly done it. I did it with this with this project. And I think we've all learned over the last 2 years of this pandemic that life is short and tomorrow isn't promised. And if you wait and wait for the perfect moment where everything is lined up, you might miss your window, right? And if you have an idea that is on your heart and that keeps tugging at you and keeps tugging at you, that is something you need to action. There's a reason why it's on your heart, right? And so take imperfect action, make a call to whoever, that person that you think, oh, might be able to talk to you about X. Write it down, create, form a company, start a website. You don't even need a website, to be honest, to start a business. Make that first sale, whatever it is. Tell people about what you're trying to do or what you are doing. Just start. That is all that I will say.
You sound like a Nike commercial. Just do it, But I think that's really it. I feel that execution trumps everything, right? Be it sitting down, strategizing, planning. I know it's important you have to plan, but if you plan and don't execute, then what's the point, right? So I think just getting on and getting on with it, it's super important, because what will happen is either it's going to work or you're going to learn quickly that that initial plan didn't work. So you can then go back and work on coming up with a plan that will work. So execution is key. Yeah. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed learning about your project and having you here and how you are using your creative gift to inspire the next generation. And I hope listeners watching right now, you do the same, because I feel that everybody, we've been given a gift to be able to create. We're all creators in our own shape and form, but it's super important for us to, number one, embrace it, but also number two, take action, right? Yeah. And actually then bringing that gift to life. So thank you so much for watching, and hope you check out the next episode. Feel free to like, comment, and share, subscribe to this channel so that as we drop more amazing interviews like this one, you guys are the first to know. So have a wonderful day. Talk to you guys soon.
Come on, guys.